Hi, and welcome back. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell, and we ended the other show saying that we are the powerful publishing duo, but we're actually the book marketing team here at Author Marketing Experts, and you are listening to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success podcast. Amy, I'm really excited about all these Amazon shows we're doing.
I know, me too, because I feel like the more we can talk about Amazon in different formats, I think the less scary it gets.
Yes.
and the more it makes sense to authors that really should be taking advantage of all of these different things they can do with Amazon in order to ensure that they're really top notch and everything is optimized for them and working for them to sell more books. So I love that we're getting more of this out there because, the more you talk about it, the less scary it is, right? Isn't that what they say?
Right, exactly. And this show will be airing on December 3rd, I believe, if I have my calendar correctly. And we are going to be in the midst of the launch of the 2021 edition of How to Sell Books by the Truckload on Amazon. And we're going to be doing a bunch of promos for that. And Amy, do you want to take us through quickly the BOGO promo that we're going to be doing?
Yes. So essentially what you're going to do, you're going to buy the new book. You're going to let us know. We're going to give you a week's free access to our Master Amazon and Sell More Books video membership. It has well over 50 videos right now, so there's a lot of content in there, and we are constantly adding to it and also updating. That is the really key part, is that, a lot of things change, but these videos that Penny does are, I say, relatively easy to update, but she's very generous with their time, and she does get in there and does make a point to update the videos for strategies where Amazon noticeably has changed how they do things. So it really is a really valuable tool. And then once you get your week's free access, you actually get a really great discount code to get a full year's membership for much less than the retail price. So even if you think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have time in the next week to go through a lot of these videos, still sign up, get your access code, get your free week, so you at least have that discount for later. So you get the whole year to wrap your mind around all things Amazon and start utilizing all of these tips and recommendations.
Yeah, and there's also Amy's very generous. She has co-recorded shows with me. We did a bunch on Goodreads because I know we have the Goodreads shows that we've done actually on the podcast are some of our highest rated. So there's several Goodreads videos and things like that and all kinds of really fun stuff. But I'm so excited to be releasing How to Sell Books by the Truckload 2021 edition, mostly because, as any of you know who have released a book, by the time your book comes out, you're kind of done with your, the editor sent it back to me and she said, hey, you should probably look at this. I'm like, I'm done with my book. Thanks.
Right? Yeah.
I'm so ready. Oh, please, I'm just so ready to get this book published. But here's an interesting thing, and I am always so surprised at how authors overlook their Amazon categories, which we're going to dig into today. And we don't have the visual ability to kind of walk you through this with screenshots and whatnot, so we're going to do our best to explain it to you. But
not a lot of video membership.
Amy's so
I know. I can't help myself.
That's so fabulous. I love it. But not a lot of folks talk about the beauty of the Amazon categories. And I love this topic for a variety of reasons, because you want to capitalize on how particular consumers are with their book preferences, meaning particular elements that they like in their book. And Amazon knows this, right? So we're going to dig into this in a minute, but Amazon knows that consumers search by book elements, not just, hey, I want to read a mystery novel. I mean, we see that a lot, don't we?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's really important because, again, it's one thing to sit here and put your author cap on and your marketing cap and try to get behind the buyer psychology, but you can learn so much by taking a step back and also remembering that you are also a consumer.
Yeah.
And reminding yourself of the steps you go through when you are trying to purchase something. Because books are a serious investment in time for a reader. So yeah, books may not be super expensive, but the time that goes into consuming that product is pretty intense. So people are really serious about it. So that's why when it's like, oh my gosh, why am I not selling more books? I've discounted it to this. My ebook's only $2.99. It's like, well, but you're also asking for multiple hours of that person's life.
Yeah.
So it really is a big deal. And a lot of people that read fiction have, like make it or break it tropes that they follow or avoid. And they will actively search out books that very much speak to what their interest is or what they absolutely don't like. So if your book mentions, it's just really important. And it's good to remember that as an author, when you start blurring these lines, thinking, ooh, I'm going to get more sales by spreading this out a little bit more and trying to cover all these different areas, it really doesn't work out for you the way you think it will. It's typically not in your best interest to try to cover more ground with your book, because a lot of times it'll just land you in hot water when it comes to reviews and ratings and things like that. And definitely with word of mouth recommendations,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Amy, you and I both do Amazon optimizations. And one thing I love is, so first off, let me back up just a little bit and say that when you uploaded your book to wherever you published your book, you were probably asked for your BISAC categories, and you were probably asked for 2 of them, or you selected 2 of them if you uploaded it to the Amazon dashboard. But the Kindle store is a whole different animal, right? So on the Kindle store, you can go and dig through categories and drop down. So for example, if you're listening to this podcast and you're sitting at your desk, open up the Kindle, and it doesn't work quite as well. Like, it's harder to get to this stuff on your phone. So, the next time that you're sitting at your desktop, go to the Amazon store, head on over to the Kindle book side, and down the left-hand side, you'll see the various categories. When you click on one, and let's say it's business or mystery or something like that, it gives you drop-down options, and then more drop-down options, and more drop-down options, and it's fabulous.
Yes, exactly. I think this is so important, and it's still, and also because our heads are in this all the time, it blows my mind when authors are like, well, these are the categories I'm in. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much potential here. And I start geeking out. And I will say I get a little upset with Amazon because I feel like they've really cut some of these topics and genres off way too soon. Like, I don't understand why there aren't more subtopics for self-help, because I feel like that's such a personal thing.
Yeah.
So this is really, it's like, oh, it's kind of an imperfect system sometimes, because we get these books that are super great and there's a strong market out there, but it's like, why did Amazon leave that subcategory out of all of them, that that are represented there? But, it's also helpful as you dig into these categories. This is great research, because you should check out the other books that are showing up there.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a great way to get creative. Some of them are obviously playing the system and don't belong there. Ignore those. But if you're seeing that a lot of the books that are showing up in these really niche categories also align with who your market is, then you've really found a winner. And that's somewhere where you need to be, because it's like, wow, these are my readers. These are my people. I need, it's a really good indication that you need to be in that category. And I think sometimes authors will be surprised at what they find, because it seems like you have this notion of what should be in this category. When you start exploring what really exists there, it's like, oh, there's a lot of creativity to this. And it kind of helps you think outside of the box too.
Well, and absolutely. And the other piece of it is that I talk to authors, not all the time, but enough that it kind of sticks in my mind, that they want that bestseller flag. I mean, I think everybody wants the bestseller flag, right? Everyone's like, oh, I want to have the Amazon bestseller flag by my book. But sometimes authors come to me and they want to do it by means that may get you kicked off of the Amazon system. And by that, I mean, they want to cram their books into categories that are super narrow, but not necessarily relevant to their book. And that creates a problem, because you could violate Amazon's terms of service. You could get your book pulled. I mean, it's just not, I would, as Amy pointed out, if you pull up a category and your book doesn't look like it belongs there, it's probably the wrong category. And with the key, we talked about we've talked about keywords a lot on our various shows and whatnot. And the same thing is true for keywords. If you're popping any kind of search categories or keywords into the Amazon search bar and it's pulling up books and yours does not look like it fits there, then you may have to have a conversation with yourself and say, where exactly do I need to be? Because the more narrow that you go, in your market, meaning the fewer books that are in these categories. This helps your algorithm because every time that your book hits number one in the right category for your market, it pings the Amazon search engine that your book is relevant. So to your relevancy score, which is a show we did a few weeks ago, and Amazon will show your book more in both the also bots, and your book recommendations and things like that. And I mean, and that's important, right? You want to get your book shown more.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that you and I talk about, Amy, is that, a lot of the categories, like for my truckload book, are not necessarily sexy, right? So like author resources, which is fine because it is an author resource, but it's not really like a sexy category like you think about, like, oh, I want to be an overall best-selling author in how-to books or something. It's like, well, there are approximately 8 million books on Amazon. There might be 5 million in how-to alone because we know that that's a popular category. Sure. Good luck competing with that.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's nothing more exciting than when I see, after we've been working with an author and they take our recommendations, because there's something very cool. You feel like you found treasure when you find a category that works for your author that has like fewer than 1,000 books. There are very few of those anymore, but they still happen every once in a while. And I got to tell you, that is one of the most exciting parts of what I do when I'm working on these Amazon optimizations and things like that, because it's like, I feel like I'm delivering a Christmas present early. It's like, here is your very awesome category. Please start using this ASAP. And and we've had a couple authors recently that have gotten the top 100 in these categories for their book. And it's been so cool. And they get so excited, as they should. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm showing up in a top 100 list on Amazon.
Well, and and I can vouch for the fact that Amy gets really excited because she'll send me an email or she'll send me a text or something about, oh my gosh, look at this category that I found. And it really is fun. It is a little bit of it's a fun treasure hunt, right? To find these right categories. But the other piece of this that I want to mention too is that, and many of you who have attended my classes or read my books, you've heard me talk about this before, you're allowed to have 10 categories for both your print book and for your ebook. And I love putting my book in more categories. And when I teach classes, I use the example of, because sometimes people say, well, why do I want to be in 20 categories? Well, let's use the example of a Starbucks or a McDonald's, right? So driving down any street, any town in America, hard pressed not to see one or both of those on lots and lots of street corners, right? And showing up in more places gives you more access to your audience. It gives you more exposure and potentially more sales. So showing up in 20 different categories, for example, you're going to now have 20 additional opportunities to get in front of your audience and and to sell more books. So Amy, let's talk about, because you're much better at explaining this than I am actually. When we find the categories for our authors, how do you recommend that they go and update those on their book on Amazon?
Well, essentially the simplest way to do it, and again, the authors that we work with, we give them very clear instructions on this, because this is another one of those, double-edged swords with Amazon where, reaching out can dramatically change the course of your day based on, whether you get the help you need right away, you're talking to the right person, you're asking the right questions, all that kind of stuff. So you really do. Amazon, this is fortunately something they do a lot. So there's a very clear process for submitting. Like, they want to see the entire string of the category. So from start to finish. So Kindle ebooks all the way down to your very niche category. They want to see the proof that exists in their system. And if you can give them to them in that exact format, you can have your categories changed with a email. And it's so simple and so easy. But truly though, following their instructions for what they need, because we do get emails from our clients that say, I sent them the links and they said they can't do it. And now what do we, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's all right. Take a step back. Like, reference this section here, follow this format that we give you, and everything will be okay. And it really does work out really well. But it is one of those things where it's quite a simple process. So don't avoid doing this thinking like, oh, great, they told me I have to cancel, contact Amazon. Never mind.
Right.
It's a very simple process. And what's great is that once you do it once, you're going to be able to do it again in the future, because this is like many Amazon categories. It's not static, right, Penny?
Yeah. And categories do, first off, I love changing up categories. So sometimes when an author that we work with has a book that could be straddling a whole bunch of different, categories, we can suggest that they make some changes down the road. But also categories do come and go on Amazon, and they don't necessarily, Amazon doesn't always get rid of categories. I haven't seen that as much as I did a few years ago, but they're constantly adding to categories, which is great because it means that Amazon is paying attention to consumer behavior, which obviously they're very good at. But for example, several years ago, you would never see holiday romance or Christmas romance in book categories. And now you absolutely do, which is so fun.
Yes, and I was working on an optimization recently for a business, even, an industry related book. And I will say I was really impressed that Amazon has gotten so much more specific about the different industries that you can associate yourself with under the business umbrella, which I think is very, very smart, because realistically, a lot of things really do have very legitimate applications to different industries, but for very different reasons. And it's nice that you can nestle your book in there and get in front of the exact right people versus these broader categories that are ultra competitive, where 800 out of 1,000 people scanning through. It's like, no, that's not what I need. That's not what I need. So I love to see these more niche subcategories represented on Amazon. So it reminds buyers and shoppers that, hey, look, we've got you covered. Check out books under this specific area of interest for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're much better off when it comes to categories. As I said, it would be great to be a bestseller overall in a major, massive category. But the reality is that people don't typically shop that way anyway. We're looking for things that are specific to us, right? We're in the age of, you walk into a Starbucks and you order a drink that 20 years ago, what I mean? Like 20 years ago, you would have thought, oh my gosh, what is that? But we are so, we're really, really specific in what needs we are looking to fill and how the book that we're looking to serve that. But the other thing is that I love to do a category refresh on books. So if you've already added your categories, by the way, we're going to put a link in the show notes. If you're listening to this, you're like, I have no idea what categories I'm in, or I did this a number of years ago or something. You can pop your ASIN or ISBN number in this link and it'll tell you which categories you're in. So it's a really cool tool. But you can always add and remove categories. So when something becomes, maybe it's more seasonal, or you found categories at Amazon just add and you think, oh, that's a great one for my book. If you've already used your allotment of 10, you can try sending them the categories and see if they'll just add it, but they may say, hey, which ones do you want to remove? And that's where the link that I mentioned that I'll put in the show notes is helpful, because you can kind of pick and choose the ones that you want to, get rid of.
Yes, I think that's really smart, because I love when authors let us know that they've made updates, when they say, hey, I've changed this because I saw this, or I was doing research. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a proud mama. Like,
I know
like, I found new stuff. I've changed it up. It's really great, because nothing about Amazon really should ever be static. And that doesn't mean you need to get in there every day, but we've got our free download, our monthly book marketing planner. And then we've also got an Amazon checklist that we have that you can print off and actually put dates on it to keep yourself accountable for how often you check your different Amazon components, and, get on a regular schedule of doing that. And when you do that, things start making a lot more sense too, the more practice you get with these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And Amy, you deal a lot with the refined buys. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Refine buys, yes. These refine buys, they continue to be kind of this ongoing, offgoing mystery for me because they really do change. They don't change a lot, but how you use them really changes. And I don't know, Penny, maybe what they're doing in the back end of the system that sometimes make that potentially changes how relevant they are in certain ways. It blows my mind though, how they kind of blow hot and cold. But essentially refine buys are, if y'all have done any of this research and really gone into these niche categories, they show up as, they're essentially certain character types. There's certain character types, their moods, their themes, their locations show up in your book that help people really, consumers, dig into what they're interested in. So there's things like beaches or disturbing, it's really interesting to see. And then also the characters like alpha males, female protagonists. They have a lesbian protagonist specifically. They've gotten really specific with the refine buys, which I really appreciate. But I will say it's really hard sometimes to utilize them as keywords because it helps the consumer narrow down books that fit their interest, it doesn't necessarily mean that consumers are actually using those terms verbatim in their search. And so that's where you have to be really careful and do your testing. But they do want to make it easier for people to find books that they want to buy. So I definitely think you should look into these, know what's out there, and know what Amazon is kind of funneling shoppers and buyers toward, especially for finding what they like. And keep these concepts in mind to use these terms in your description if you can, and definitely in the other areas that Amazon Author Central lets you put in content. Because I think using refine buys in multiple places in your product page and things like that is a really smart way to incorporate those terms that shoppers are seeing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like recognition. It's like, ooh, Amazon showed me that I could search for romance novels that happen at the beach. And so making sure that you bring that up in your description, or again, in your Author Central sections where you can say, mention that most of this story happens at the beach or on a beach vacation. Things like that are really psychologically valuable to shoppers as they're deciding what they're going to buy.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing that I will say is that I think because Amazon is getting really creative with their categories, as we've talked about, I think that they're also going to be getting away from the refined buys. So it's a good thing to know, and to know that these are the keywords that folks are searching on. But keep an eye on this, because I think that essentially, because their categories is what they are, I think they are going to start to get folded into the actual Amazon categories, which will be really fun, and I think maybe less confusing for authors.
Yes, I agree. I think that's the hard part too, Penny. Sorry, not to cut you off, but you made a very good point. They are essentially categories. They're just not categories that you can officially request with Amazon, if that makes sense. So there's this kind of tightrope that authors are walking in regards to how to utilize this data, and knowing that, okay, Amazon is trying to funnel people searching for books into these certain, categories, because that's what people are buying and that's what they're interested in. And so obviously it's been in Amazon's best interest to group books by these standout elements, but they haven't gone so far as to make them official categories yet. So yeah, that's really interesting, Penny. I do hope they start incorporating them as official categories in the near future.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do too. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's just a really cleaner way for authors, but it's also a cleaner way for readers to find these, to find the books that they're looking for. So I want to thank you all so much for listening. Again, we're focused on Amazon because of the release of How to Sell Books by the Truckload on Amazon. And I'm super excited about this book coming out. We're going to put more details in the show notes. By the time you listen to this show, it will be up for pre-order on Amazon. If it's not up for pre-order by the time this show airs, Penny will be rocking in a corner, just as anybody
so send alcohol. Yeah.
Right. As anybody who has released a book knows, the release time is always like there's just a million different things going on. And we also appreciate so much the reviews that we've gotten. We are now on Audible, so we'd love to get reviews there. And remember that when you're posting the review, share a nugget of what you learned, because that's also a great way, not just to inspire others to listen, but it's a great way for you to remember something from the show that you're going to implement in your book marketing. And I'll tell you something, if you spent 20 minutes with us and you found one solid piece of advice, hopefully you found more, but if you found one solid piece of advice,
we'll take one. One's good. Yeah.
I love Amy. She's like, bar's not that high. I'll take one. Thanks. I'm good with that. But I always, even when I'm taking a class or something, if I say, my intention with this class is to have one solid takeaway, and I find that it's definitely worth the effort. So we love your show ideas also. So send us your show ideas. You can send it to us at info@amarketingexpert.com. This is Amy Cornell and Penny Sansevieri, and we thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.